Welcome to UFHL Now! A close-up look at the ultimate fantasy hockey league. The most realistic fantasy gameplay. High stakes. High reward. Here's your host, the owner of Duckman's domination in the UFHL, and the mighty Mallards of the UFAHL, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of UFHL Now. I believe this is episode number 34. Shout out to John Van Beesbrook, who wore that number. And, of course, a shout out to UFSN, the network that makes sure this show goes forward. My name is Dean Millard. It's a pleasure to be here on the program with you and bringing you all the news about Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. Okay, our proud sponsors that we have, and they are tremendous sponsors, so I'd like to say thank you very much to them, particularly Instat, our title sponsor, Fanalytica. We're going to talk about them a little bit with Larry, Puckpedia, and what Hart Levine is doing, and Elite Prospects, as well as Maplewood Hockey. You're going to be able to get your own jerseys very soon from Maplewood Hockey, and just in time for Christmas. Or forget about Christmas, as Andy says. Just go get your jersey right now, or your gear, whatever it is. So big thanks to everybody who makes this league the greatest of all time. If you want to get in touch with us, a few ways to do it. You can follow the league at the UFHL, scouting at UFHL_scouting, and at UFF Sports. If you would like to get more information about Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, info at UFFsports.com, and go check out the website www.uffsports.com. So lots of stuff to get to. On the program today, we are going to take a look at the six-pack of top performers. We will, of course, take a look at the top 10 standings and see who's moved. One big move since last week for sure. A closer look, a top 5 statistical category in UFHL, and, of course, Larry Fisher, UFHL Insider. And I think Larry's going to have something really, really big this week for everybody to enjoy. Also, we will have the Duck Call a little bit later on in the show. And with that one, we are going to be talking about trades, asks, offers, and reactions. So let's get on with the show right now with UFHL Now.
You're watching the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network, UFSN, your one-stop fantasy shop. Get in touch on Twitter at UFS Network. Email us, ufsn@uffsports.com.
All right, so I'm going to start with a brand new look for Duckman's domination, and I'm a proud Drake, a proud Papa Duck here, because these look absolutely gorgeous. A big thank you to Commissioner Andrea Karanduk, who put in a lot of time on these. I absolutely love the double D patch on the pants. I think that is so cool. I love the font. I love that Captain Colton is in the picture. The gloves look so cool. I mean, I firstly, I have to apologize to everybody else's jersey. I did not look as closely at all these jerseys as I have mine. And now I'm going back and look at someone. The detail work is incredible. I absolutely love it. I love our look, and the whites are spectacular as well. Like, they pop. They really pop. I love the gloves, the font. It's just absolutely gorgeous in my opinion. So the whites and the darks for Duckman's domination. We are really, really excited to get those onto some merchandise and get going. So let's get going with the week that was in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And you know, sometimes we do these six-pack of top performers, and you're seeing the same names. You're seeing the same names all the time, show to show, etc., etc. Usually it involves a McDavid or a Draisaitl. But this week we're seeing some different names. How about Alex Collorn? The top point producer with 27.21 points in this week. And you know what? He didn't do it by racking up 50 penalty minutes. Goals, assists. He did have some PIMs, but he also had some penalties drawn and 10 shots on goal. And he chipped in with 6 assists that didn't make this list. That is a lot of categories. The only thing he didn't collect for was block shots, power play points, and fights. That's a great week for Alex Collorn of Dynasty and, of course, of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Freddie Anderson for the Crypto Knights. Big week as well. Just gives up a couple of goals, pitches a shutout, 84 saves, 3-0 record for Andy and the Crypto Knights. And Vladimir Tarasenko for Kamikaze. Donnie Talk went out and picked up this player and gets rewarded 22, just under 23 points for the week. 3 goals, 3 assists, 14 shots on goal. Really, Tarasenko just firing the puck again. He also had 3 hits, and one of those goals was a game winner. So, good stuff there for Kamikaze and Vlad Tarasenko. Stingrays, loving this one. Elias Lindholm. And they're a Flames fan, is Arlo Schultz as well. And Lindholm got it done. 4 goals this week. The Flames just rolling. 1 assist, a penalty drawn, and also another guy firing the puck. 6 hits as well did Lindholm. So chipping in quite a bit there. Jonathan Huberdeau for the Royals, or they might as well just rename them the Florida Panthers cheerleading section, as Arnie Entz loves the Panthers. And I don't blame him. That Panthers team is one of the most underrated of entertaining teams in the league. We'll see what happens with the coaching change moving forward, but be really, really interesting. So Huberdeau had a great week. He had 6 points spread out between 3 goals and 3 helpers. 2 of them were game winners and a couple of points on the power play. So just a dynamic forward. Also had 7 shots on goal. And Kyle Connor of Red Army, a goal, 5 helpers, 14 shots, dished out a hit as well. Pretty impressive. Roman Josi was great for the Crypto Knights as well. He had 23.75 points, 5 assists, 2 goals, 10 shots on goal, 3 of them on the power play. So pretty impressive stuff this week for our 6-pack of top performers. Now it's time to take a closer look at a statistical category. We don't only have so many, so we won't be able to do this every week, but we'll recap different ones. And so far, we're looking at the top 5 hit leaders. We have Cal Clutterbuck at number 1, not surprising, at 35. He's tied with Nicholas Deslauriers, also at 35. Radko Gudas, Darnell Nurse of the Grizzlies, with 33, and Jamie Alexiak coming in with 31 hits in that regard. So 0.25 points for hits, and we'll see what happens with that as we get into our top 10. So looking at the top 10 this week, the big change is the Royals now number 1, and they were 7th last week, and it was very early, but they make a big jump. They are the first team to reach 400 points in UFHL, as they have crested that thanks to just a massive week, or a massive night the other day, but they're closing in on 420 points. And that's a massive gap. It's almost a 40-point gap between the Royals and West Coast Express. The Yetis, Gators, and Grizzlies, who were number 1 last week, rounding out the top 5. Red Army, Battlehawks, Titans, Stallions, and the Stingrays sneaking in the top 10, edging out Strong Island by less than a point. And you know, I mentioned the Royals have a bit of a gap. But you look at number 2 right down to number 10. It's 50 points. That's not a lot, considering, you have a big Saturday night or a Sunday night or a Friday night or Thursday, whatever it might be. So there's a real closeness when it comes to it. Larry and I are going to get a little bit more when it comes to the divisions and how those are stacked up as we go on the show. And without further ado, we might as well get to that now. Here is UFHL Insider Larry Fisher.
Time to get the scoop on the UFHL with our insider, Larry Fisher. He's had lines in the water all week long. What will he reel in for us today? Let's dive in and find out what's going on with the UFHL. Now!
Always fun when I get to chat with the insider Larry Fisher for UFHL Now. And, sometimes we're looking around for that big story to lead off with. And other times, Larry, it falls right into the lap right before the show. So let's get going with some big breaking news.
Yeah, Dean, it's always awesome when we get to break news, break trades, and we got a blockbuster today, so we can jump right into it. The Yetis and the Tornadoes, Dean, have hooked up on a what do we got here? We got a 9-player trade. So going from the Tornadoes to the Yetis, Tristan Jarry, Anthony Beauvillier, Tyson Jost, Barrett Hayton, Sammy Walker. In exchange, going to the Tornadoes from the Yetis, Mackenzie Blackwood, Brock Besser, Carter Rowney, and Colton Dock. So there's a lot to unpack there, Dean, at first glance, but obviously you look at the top 2 names on each side, and they roughly cancel each other out. You got the goaltending swap of Blackwood for Jarry, and then you have the forward, top 6 young forward swap of Beauvillier for Besser. And I know what's happened with the Yetis, Dean, is they got fairly tight to the salary cap, and they're looking for a little bit more flexibility. Brock Besser's at $5.8 million, and he needs a new contract next season. If he lights it up, he could be in that, certainly $7 million plus, but maybe up in that $8 to $9 million range. So I think they're looking to the future, see more cost certainty with Anthony Beauvillier. The Tornadoes, as a rebuilding franchise, looking for some franchise players, some guys to really build around. And Brock Besser is still a bigger name than Anthony Beauvillier. Both were in the same range of draft status, kind of that end of the first round range. The big, potential tipping point here, aside from how the goaltenders perform and how the NHL teams of those goaltenders perform, because that makes a big difference come playoffs. But the other thing is really the development of Tyson Jost and Barrett Hayton, who both were top 10 picks but haven't really panned out so far. Can they trend up for the Yetis going forward to help Anthony Beauvillier offset that loss of Brock Besser?
Well, it's interesting. You usually look and say who got the best player in this trade. That's who usually you assume would win this trade on first glance. But as you mentioned, that development could tip this. And Tyson Jost, I really like this kid as a player. His mom actually lives in our complex here in St. Albert, so we get to chat regularly with her. And I just like, we talk about this with Craig Button on Tracking the Draft. I wish he would have stayed one more year at North Dakota and maybe the development. And you look at other guys that have done that. But I still think there's a really good player there. But the goaltending thing will be interesting to watch. Colton Dack and the prospects and the young players. But certainly the biggest player in this deal, in my opinion, is Brock Besser. And kudos to everyone in this deal, but kudos to the Tornadoes for getting that, kind of a marquee player.
Indeed, and Tyson Jost, as you mentioned, it'd be nice to have stayed either at North Dakota for a second season, or he could have come back to the WHL. The Regina Pats traded for his rights from Everett that year, and they were hosting the Memorial Cup, so he could have had a big role on a Memorial Cup host team as well. Perhaps rushed a little bit to the NHL, but he did develop here in the Okanagan with the Pursuit of Excellence, so I got to know Tyson as a teenager as well. And Tyler was the other big name in town at that time. So interesting that neither of those two have really taken off in the NHL, but certainly Barrett Hayton's still a really young guy that was a 5th overall pick just a few years ago. But with Arizona rebuilding so much, the fact he didn't get a chance at a training camp, he is up now, so we'll see what he can do in the NHL. But certainly some people are a little bit down on Barrett Hayton as well. So you want Jost and Hayton to help Beauvillier really balance this deal out when you give up a player of Brock Besser's stature. But again, I think some cap implications perhaps got the Yetis thinking a little bit more to the future and just a little bit more roster flexibility. The other thing, Barrett Hayton's still waiver exempt. He can go down and up. And actually one thing here too, Dean, is whether it's Jost or Hayton, the Yetis feel they're an upgrade on Carter Rowney, and it feels that extra. They kind of were lingering. They were trying to trade Nolan Foote for an active roster player. They had that sort of one empty forward spot. They feel between Tyson Jost and Barrett Hayton, they've now managed to fill their entire active roster. And as you know, Dean, games played are so big in the UFHL because you maximize your games played. Every point counts. So I think that's part of the thinking here for the Yetis too, just increase that depth that much more.
All right, another deal also involving the Yetis, and there was some Brock Besser discussion in this one too, I understand.
Yeah, Dean, this is an interesting trade because it did start off, obviously the Yetis have had Brock Besser on the trade block for the better part of a month, going back to the preseason, and so he was certainly a target. Matt Gunn, the general manager of the Gators, is a Vancouver Canucks fan. So I think that, obviously the name Brock Besser caught his eye when he went on the trade block. And I believe that trade was going to be Brock Besser for Victor Olofsson and possibly William Karlsson was going to be the deal around Brock Besser. But at some point they shifted the focus to Tyson Barrie when the Yetis also floated Barrie's name out there. They said, hey, we're getting close on a Brock Besser trade, but we're also willing to listen on Tyson Barrie. And all of a sudden the Gators did a 180 and started asking about Barrie, and this trade came together. And certainly, guys like Evan Rodriguez's name came up, and the Gators, that was, the Yetis trying to fill that extra roster spot. Can you make it a 3-for-2? Give me, Victor Olofsson and Evan Rodriguez to fill out that lineup. But the Gators weren't willing to go to that extreme, but they did believe that Tyson Barrie is an upgrade on Keith Yandel, despite Yandel's strong start and obviously a cheaper salary in Philly. And again, the Yetis freed up some cap space here with Keith Yandel getting bought out last season and his new cap hit being very low compared to Tyson Barrie. That was a key here for the Yetis as well, was to continue to manage that cap space. But ironically, Dean, of course, the Yetis trade Tyson Barrie, and Scott Lowater is an Oilers fan, trades Tyson Barrie, and he scores his first goal of the season. That night, the trade went down, adds an assist for a 2-point performance. So I think the Gators are happy with it, but Victor Olofsson had 2 assists last night for the Yetis too. So this should be one of those win-win trades if you look at Barrie and Olofsson as the keys.
All right, a 3-for-1, 3 assets for 1 between the Blizzards and the Eliminators as the third trade this week.
And another franchise, the Eliminators are a team that are certainly looking to make moves and improve now, Dean. Although they've been at the bottom of the standings last season, they're trying to work their way up. So Blake Coleman is a player that was of interest to Luke Schonweiss because obviously he's a Calgary Flames fan. Blake Coleman's having a big impact for Calgary. Again, throughout this winning streak, he's been a key guy, fits in perfect there with Daryl Sutter and his style of hockey, hits a lot of categories in the UFHL. Cody Glass, another guy that didn't develop all that well. And now is back in the AHL for Nashville's affiliate. And Jacob Peltier, a first-round pick for Calgary, is doing quite well in the AHL. So 2 good prospects and a decent pick for a middle 6 forward in Blake Coleman. But again, Dean, as mentioned, the Eliminators were another one of those franchises that made legitimate offers on Brock Besser for the Yetis before landing Coleman instead. And I will say that the Yetis and Eliminators talks, Dean, from my understanding, were quite different. This package obviously is more of a futures package going to the Blizzard, whereas for the Yetis, they were looking at young NHL forwards that were, again, cutting cap space. Mm-hmm. And so you look at guys like Dylan Strome and Dylan Dubé as a possible 2-for-1 trade for Brock Besser. But I believe the Yetis were really pushing to get Martin Necas involved in that trade for Brock Besser. And I don't think the Eliminators wanted to include Martin Necas. So that's why the Eliminators changed their focus and ended up landing Blake Coleman instead.
All right, the fourth trade of significance was another multiplayer trade, and this time a 2-for-1.
Yeah, and this one, obviously a smaller deal, Dean. Of the 6 total trades that happened this week, along with 4 waiver claims and 4 UFAHL promotions, this one saw the North Stars part with a Dallas Star, which is surprising because obviously Cameron Turner, the owner of the North Stars, is a big Dallas Stars fan, and Joel Kiviranta was a real revelation in their playoff run, put up a lot of points, and has gotten top 6 opportunities. So a bit surprising they moved him, just especially because his cap hit is significantly lower than Radim Simic, who's coming in. But maybe they want to reunite the defense pairing of Radim Simic and Erik Karlsson. But certainly Josiah Slavin is Jacob Slavin's younger brother. He's more of a power forward. He's not a defender. But Josiah Slavin is maybe the key to this deal for the North Stars. But again, you look at the contracts between Simic and Kiviranta, the age between Simic and Kiviranta, and you have to think that the Battlehawks are happy with this trade to add another quality forward to their middle 6 of their lineup with Joel Kiviranta.
So 6 trades, and I don't know. I am finding the trade talk is actually heating up. I wouldn't be surprised if we're past that, maybe more than that trades. I am getting a ton of inquiries. It seems like the contenders are trying to position themselves early right now.
For sure, and I think you look at that top 10 of the standings, Dean, which you showed earlier. It's very close in points. I mean, there's not a lot of. Actually, the entire standings, Dean, top to bottom right now. There's one move, one player, one upgrade. Trading 2 prospects or 2 AHLers for 1 Blake Coleman, that can push you up 5, 6, 10 spots in the standings. So these moves are significant moves, and as we'll see when we get to the trade block, Dean, there are a number of top 6 forwards, including one from Duckmans, that are out there that I think there's going to be a bidding war for these guys, and I do think your inbox, your DMs are going to blow up because there's that many franchises that want to finish that much higher. And one thing about hockey in the UFHL, Dean, is that all 32 franchises get a payout. So whether you're 25th or 20th, that does make a difference at the end of the season because you're still getting a payout. And I think that's why you're seeing not only the contenders in the top 10 trying to load up and have an arms race there, the middle of the pack as well. And even the bottom third are trying to add at this point rather than subtract. There's a lot more buyers than sellers. So if you have a guy like Jacob Silfverberg or Phil Kessel, I think you're going to have a good number of offers coming your way.
And teams are doing anything they can to improve, whether that's waiver claims or bringing up guys from the UFAHL.
Yeah, Dean, and not a lot of big names here, but one thing, Michael Del Colli was claimed by the Eliminators off waivers. He's in the AHL, and they waived him the very next day because they had somebody coming back from injury, or they wanted to call up a prospect that's actually in the NHL. So it wouldn't be surprising if Michael Del Colli went back to the Outlaws. But overall here, Dean, just I think it really speaks to the depth of the league when you see, a guy like Connor Dewar gets called up in the NHL to make his NHL debut because of a COVID protocol situation with Minnesota. And sure enough, he also gets promoted from the Desperados to the Outlaws in the UFHL. So any player that has relevance in the NHL, it shows the depth of the UFHL and how important waiver claims, promotions for call-ups from the UFAHL. It's a very deep ecosystem, and I think all those moves add up just to show how involved the UFHL truly is.
All right, so I think now is everybody's favorite time of the show, because now we're going to tell people what moves are going to happen. And my favorite part about this sort of segment that we do is that guys and owners and gals are referring to it. Donnie Talk of Kamikaze, as seen on UFHL Now. So people are tuning in, and when you say a name, I think other people that maybe didn't know that, then they join the conversation. So GMs, you want to get what's going on UFHL Now, because it's going to start more conversation with other GMs. So what do you have for the trade block this week, Larry?
Well, we got some big names at the top, and Rock Republic, Dean, was projected by Fantrax to be the #1 franchise. They're outside the top 10. They're kind of on the playoff bubble right now, and I think Rock Republic's really looking at shaking things up. So they're entertaining offers on both Marc-Andre Fleury and Jeff Petrie. And obviously Fleury, Dean, reigning Vezina Trophy winner, but off to a rough start with Chicago. And when you look at Rock Republic, they have Spencer Knight waiting in the wings on the protected list. If they can move Marc-Andre Fleury and his big cap hit, that gives flexibility there with an entry-level contract, cheaper Spencer Knight coming up. and he would be promoted to be paired with Jordan Binnington. So they still have a really good tandem with Binnington and Knight if they're able to move Marc-Andre Fleury, but they're not going to let him go for nothing, and certainly touting the Legends League value. Owner GM of Rock Republic, Kyle Roberts, said, for anyone who's a huge believer in Legends League, the Rock Republic are willing to listen to offers on Marc-Andre Fleury, willing to accept a lower value player or pick and a nice chunk of SCO, or go a different route. So this could be one of those trades, Dean, where you see, because they don't need necessarily a roster player back, they might look for a prospect or a pick and somebody pay up to have Marc-Andre Fleury for the Legends League, who's still going to contribute this year. And Chicago should get it on the rails here at some point, hopefully, although that whole organization, as we know, is shrouded in controversy off the ice. Jeff Petrie, then, Dean, is the other name the Royals put out there. And I think he should generate a lot of interest as one of the highest scoring defenders from last season, but another guy who's been a real slow starter this season. So Marc-Andre Fleury, Jeff Petrie are guys that are off to a slow start, but I don't think Rock Republic's going to sell low. We know the value of those two players, but certainly their names are out there. The first place Royals, Dean, are putting Kevin Fiala back on the trade block. He's obviously a talented but streaky forward for Minnesota. Maybe wasn't deployed the best off the start of the season. He was on a line with, I think, Frederick Gaudreau and Brandon Duhaime, or, you know, some of these younger, newer faces in Minnesota, but they have promoted him to the top line in Minnesota with Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson-Ek. So that's a potent line. I think Kevin Fiala should start producing. And the one thing about the Royals, Dean, and we know this, is that Arnie Entz and Brent Baldwin, they're not resting on their laurels, and they won't be selling low because they've had Kevin Fiala on and off the trade block. They've had Brandon Tanev on the trade block for a year. They're not willing to move unless they get the price that they want, but they're always looking to improve. So Kevin Fiala is out there again as one of those top six forwards, Dean, that everybody's looking for. So I think the Royals see an opportunity to get that bidding war going for Kevin Fiala. And next up, Duckman's debating dealing Jakob Silfverberg. And there you go, Dean. Now you got some competition with Silfverberg's name out there up against Kevin Fiala. But certainly there's enough buyers to go around that both those guys are going to get significant interest. And as you mentioned, Dean, franchises are asking about Silfverberg's availability. You weren't planning to deal him, but now you're listening, and certainly he won't be cheap because he's off to a good start. Looking again to the future for Duckman's 2022 picks, prospects, good young players in return is what you're wanting. And certainly Silfverberg's got a manageable contract with $5.25 million for 2 more years after this one. So, and then, Dean, you look at the franchises that are buyers that are looking to add those type of players, Fiala and Silfverberg among others. The Gators, they got to replace Victor Olofsson. You know, Jake Evans was the forward they took back in that trade in order to get Tyson Barrie, but Victor Olofsson's a big loss up front. They're looking to replace Victor Olofsson, willing to part with top D prospects, including Scott Perunovich and Robin Salo, among others. And Scott Perunovich might be the best player outside the NHL right now, Dean. He's lighting it up in the AHL, coming off a lost season to knee surgery. He's looking to, he's returned to form. And then certainly, again, the Gators being a win now franchise as a top 10 contender, they're certainly looking to move quickly and replace Victor Olofsson. Kamikaze, as you mentioned, Dean, as seen on UFHL Now last week by Donnie Talk, they are still pursuing a top 6 forward, and they're offering up some really interesting names too, Dean, such as Brendan Brisson, who's off to a really good start with University of Michigan. That team's obviously stacked, first-round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights. Roby Jarventi is a prospect on the rise in Ottawa's AHL system. And then 2 Russian defensemen that are really interesting, Dean. Igor Zamula came up through the WHL as an unsigned guy and has made a big impact, made waves in Philadelphia as a guy that's on the cusp there. And a really, really interesting one, Daniil Miromanov, who's actually still with Easton's scouting services. But Daniil Miromanov is one to keep an eye on. He's got the call-up with Zach Whitecloud injured in Vegas, and he had a really good preseason for Vegas, as well as a 2024 first-round pick. One thing Donnie Talk added, Dean, that made me chuckle, no dinosaurs, please. Kamikaze is trying to stay young, stay under 30 years old with their core, and certainly under 25 if they can, but they're in the market for that top 6 forward as well. And last but not least, Dean, the Outlaws are also still seeking help at forward in exchange for futures, ideally. And they are listening on Jake Allen, who just posted a 45-save shutout last night. So for Montreal, so Jake Allen's value is likely heading up, but they would need a a backup goaltender in return, and certainly they would like to have a forward coming back. That's somebody to upgrade on that spot that they opened up with Michael Del Colli, but another full-time NHL forward that ideally middle six or top six.
No dinosaurs. I like that. That was quite funny. So it's interesting. I'm not. We were not planning on trading Silfverberg because I love that cap hit, and obviously he's having a great start. And we plan to be competitive next year. We can't be competitive with all first-year entry-level contracts. We need some veterans that can do some stuff. So the price is going to be high for a guy like that I think has a very manageable cap hit and can be in a good position. The other guy, and you and I have talked about it, is Phil Kessel. We're starting to get calls on Kessel. Colton Parayko, we're getting calls. We're not looking to trade a lot of these players, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later in the Duck Call about when somebody comes asking you for a trade and you don't want to trade that guy, your price is going to be pretty high. And, luckily most of the people I've talked to have not been terribly offended by that. But when you ask for somebody and that team doesn't want to trade that player, they're going to make the price really, really high. But I love the discussion that's going on, and nobody, even the number one team or the team out of the playoffs is they're not stopping when it comes to improving. And that doesn't mean improving maybe this year, but like the Rock Republic, they're saying, okay, this might not be our year. How do we improve for next year? So whether you're losing this year or winning, everybody is still trying to improve.
Absolutely, Dean. And I think the point you made there too about, Duckmans are trying to put pieces in place. Eliminators, look what they just did to bring in Blake Coleman. Mm-hmm. I know the Crypto Knights would like to improve. The Tornadoes, they're making moves to try and get better. Everybody's trying to go up, and there's not any perennial sellers that are happy. Maybe Duckmans for the first season, but now already you're starting to put those pieces in place. Mm-hmm. Who's going to be our core guys? Who's going to be our leadership group? Well, Colton Parayko. Well, how awesome are the new Duckmans jerseys with Colton Parayko's name on? You'd hate to turn around and trade him, but there's a price for everyone, but it might be a steep price, like you said, Dean. And certainly another franchise that we know is on working the trade block is the Stingrays, and they're looking more so for a defense swap. They tried to get one for Troy Stetcher, and there were no takers on Troy Stetcher. So now they've put Gustav Forsling, who obviously has ties to Duckmans. He's a former Mighty Mallard of the UFAHL, but certainly Forsling is now the name that's being dangled by the Stingrays as a potential trade bait to try and he's been off to a good start, so maybe sell high on Gustav Forsling and try and get a different type of defender back. And then the Eliminators, Dean, who are busy, and Luke Schonweiss has been a lot more active this season, as we've seen. He was active right from the free agent frenzy auction in the offseason. He brought in guys like Kyle Okposo and Philip Deneau, and some of these contracts that were let go, he brought them in, and it has helped the Eliminators. But again, Kyle Okposo's on a real rebound in Buffalo, and he's one of the surprise stories there, along with Jeff Skinner and the Sabres in general. But Eliminators are offering up veterans such as Kyle Okposo and Ryan Murray, who's also off to a decent start with Colorado, had 2 assists last night. So it'll be interesting to see what Stingrays and Eliminators do with maybe some more depth moves, but certainly looking to shake up their rosters as well.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing, is that people are always active. And so we're about 10 games in right now. What are you seeing as far as, other than what we talked about, so many people are jammed up, but what are you seeing at the 10-game mark so far, Larry?
Yeah, we're getting there. We're at that 7-8 game mark. So by next week's episode, and we're actually taking next week off. So we're going to be, this is essentially the 10-game mark, which is always somewhat of a measuring stick, Dean. I always say American Thanksgiving which is still a month away. That's the real measuring stick. That's sort of the 20-game mark, the quarter pole of the season. That's where I really do the measuring. But off the start, Dean, how about that Howe division? With the Royals, West Coast Express, and Gators, Dean. At one point last night, they were 1, 2, and 3 in the overall standings on Thursday night. Gators ended up falling down to 4th by the end of the night, even though they were the leaders in last night's scoring, but all from the same division. The Royals, obviously, Dean, they're up by 30-plus points in first place, which they're off to an amazing start, but they would be leading by even more, Dean, if not for benching Ilya Sorokin last Saturday for a 10-point shutout. And that was, they just decided to go with Vitek Vanasek instead. And Ilya Sorokin, though, what does he do? He turns around, he gets back-to-back starts Saturday and Sunday, shutouts both days for the Royals. So Ilya Sorokin's been stellar in Varlamov's absence, and a lot of things are coming up. All three of those franchises are firing in all cylinders, but certainly the Royals are off to the hottest start of any franchise in the UFHL. And then, Dean, some of the early season standings surprises. The Gretzky division, and actually the Howe division and the Gretzky division, Dean, as you know, were the two weaker divisions in the respective conferences last season. To start this season, they're the two stronger divisions. It's early days, like I said, not even a tenth of the way into the season, but so far they've emerged as the two stronger divisions, which is a flip from last year. And the Gretzky division, Dean, had been holding down 5 of the top 10 spots in the overall standings until last night when the CanWest Generals dropped out of the top 10. But the Grizzlies, Red Army, Battlehawks, and Stallions are all still fairly secure in the top 10. But again, Dean, one big night, the standings can change 5 to 10 spots. That's how tight it is top to bottom. And some other interesting ones, quick hitters. Strong Island is still hanging around the top 10 despite Fantrax projecting Strong Island to be a lottery-type team. So that's interesting that Strong Island's been off to a strong start despite not having that depth. And then the expansion Bentley Jacks, Dean, are holding down a playoff position just outside the top 10 as the 4th seed in the Howe, which is great to see in their first year. And on the other side, Dean, the teams that aren't performing as well as maybe projected or expectations, the defending regular season champion Ice Vikings are in 19th, which of course is a funny spot in the UFHL standings with all the Red Army joking, but Ice Vikings are currently holding down 19th. They're missing Evander Kane. He was a big part of their team, and certainly their defense is depleted from last season. And then other ones that are off to a slower start, Dean, are the Outlaws, the Blades of Steel, and the Brutes. All 3 of those were playoff franchises from last season, and all 3 of them are outside the top 20 thus far. And last but not least, Dean, the Warriors. The Warriors just cannot get over the injury bug, battling injuries again this season, and they were bringing up the rear, Dean, at one point earlier this week in the overall standings, which obviously is surprising. The Warriors being last place, but underachieving and should trend up as the season progresses, providing they get healthy.
All right, so I love the suggestions that we get from the community and the ideas that we get from the community. And, you know, I like I'm learning in Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, and Andy and Max and Jamie learned, a popular phrase is read the rule book, because all the things are in there. But another popular phrase is make sure you remember to suggest that at the meetings, because we get all these great suggestions now. And then, you know, we get to the meeting time and it's crickets. Everybody forgets to put in their ideas, but there are some great ideas. So please remember to use those meetings or those ideas at the meeting. But this is a really good suggestion.
And even if it's somebody else's idea, Dean, it's worth jotting down, because there's no guarantee they're going to remember to submit their own ideas. So Scott Lowater, the Yetis GM, I believe this conversation came up because the Royals had a 70 or 72 point daily high score, which was like 20 points higher than anyone else that day on a Saturday. And Brent Baldwin asked if it was an all-time record for the UFHL, the highest daily score. And then Scott Lowater chimed in and said there should be an award at the end of the season for highest daily score of the year, or even just a $5 worth of SCO award, perhaps, to the highest daily score of each month. So I think it would be interesting to really track, okay, what's the kind of the running high score, and every time it gets bumped, you just replace it throughout the season and throughout the history of the UFHL to really see who had those record-breaking nights or award-worthy nights throughout the month and the season as a whole.
I love that. I love historical records as well. Jamie Thomas and I have been in a fantasy football league since the early 2000s. We've been in it, and he likes to joke that the fire burned the original record book, and they were all, because he kept for like 10 or 12 years statistical records. And I think that's amazing, especially with something that we have to look back and say, wow, you know, in 2035 the Royals beat their own record of the high daily score, or whatever it might be. I just think that's so cool. So great suggestions. Let's all remember them when it comes to meetings and putting those proposals forward. Speaking of remembering, we got to get you something before November 1st.
Yeah, another reminder, Dean, for the scouts to remember to submit their scout draft rankings. So their top 64 for the 2022 NHL draft. The deadline is Monday, November 1st. And this really, Dean, it establishes the projected minimum bids for the 2022 entry auction as well. So you want more lists submitted because it'll result in more of a consensus and get some different names on there. And a few scouts have submitted, but we're hoping for at least a few more over the weekend. And certainly, Dean, these scout rankings, something that's important to note is that they will stay confidential. In years past or last season, at one point we were putting out to try and recognize the scouts who had which scout, which prospect ranked where. But of course, all our scouts, or the vast majority of our scouts, are affiliated with franchises. Well, they get cold feet submitting their lists now because they don't want to tip off everybody that, hey, our franchise, with the way the entry auction works, you bid on a spot and then you pick your prospect. Well, you don't want to put out your scout list saying, hey, here's my, everybody else has them at 10, I have them at 5. You don't want to tip your hand on your strategy for your franchise through your scout rankings. So rather than give the scouts recognition as to who had them ranked highest and lowest, we're just going to keep it confidential. And you submit your list. I'll be the only one who sees it. I have no skin in the game. And then we average out the lists and come up with the UFHL consensus. I will release my preliminary top 6-4, my personal rankings, as well as part of the published article. But it will be interesting to see. And another talking point that came out on the Scout chat, Dean, was Arnie Entz from Pipeline Prospects, GM of the Royals, said, are we submitting a real-life talent list or a fantasy value talent list, a fantasy value list? Because they are vastly different just with the scoring system of the UFHL. Are we putting out which are the 64 top prospects for the UFHL or the NHL? So I did clarify, Dean, and I said base it more on real-world value because the top 64 in the real world, the first and second round picks from the actual NHL draft, are still the players that set those minimum bids for the algorithm. Even though they're not the 64 players necessarily that are going to get picked in the UFHL, the minimum bids are still based on that. And this scout rankings do set the minimum bids. So keep everything real world. Don't think so much about fantasy value. Think more about who do you think the top 64 prospects are for the NHL in 2022, Dean. And one last thing on there, recommend obviously the ranking to be the real world for the NHL draft, but worth noting, Dean, one of our great partners, Fanalytica, Rob Love and Dan Tinsman, they've updated their scout portal. Now that, like I said, now that we're at that 10-game mark for most prospects as well, all around the world, the CHL, the USHL, they flipped forward to use this season's data, now showing all the stats for this season. And if you're a Fanalytica subscriber, Dean, and many of our scouts are, this is your opportunity to go view the top eligible prospects from every league across the world, according to Fanalytica's data and their advanced stats. So, and you can click WHL and it's going to give you a listing of and it will give you the available players on the UFFS platform. You can filter out the guys that are already owned and it'll say, oh, well, here's the guys Fanalytica says are performing well in the WHL to start this season. And that's an easy way to go register players as a scout, even if you're not a huge hockey fan and you trust Fanalytica's track record and history of finding the steals. You can go in and see, okay, who's available according to Fanalytica, and then turn around and register them on the UFFS platform. And certainly, Dean, another thing to tie into the scout rankings, you can also sort by draft year. You can see, okay, let's just look at the 2022 eligibles. Who are the top performing prospects? And you can use Fanalytica to help assist you through their analytics as far as finalizing your draft rankings for Monday. So just another tool that's out there and available within our ecosystem through our partner Fanalytica.
Well, I know, Craig Button, who advises Duckman's Domination and is the president of high-level scouting of the hockey division. I know his rankings will be based on the actual NHL because that's what he does. And I know that, other than you, I guess we would be the only scout that puts their rankings out there because Craig, of course, has his. Now, he doesn't have his top 64 out, but he does have his top 32 up on tsn.ca. So there could be some mystery in the back half of that. But, we're certainly looking forward to, and Craig is working on his list on behalf of high-level scouting to get that in there. So it's always interesting, and I think it's smart to keep those confidential because, as we're seeing in not just hockey, but in other sports on UFFS, prospects are worth their weight in gold, and we're talking about a lot of money. So people want to be a little bit more protective, and I think that's a really good move. And then you can put out your rankings based on, what you think it is as well. All right. Tomorrow we have something big. And before you say I'm lazy, I left these up as subliminal for people to start thinking about baseball, even though we're on UFHL Now, because we have our franchise auctions next week. I'm really excited to see Connor Bedard in person because I'll be in Regina. The Wheat Kings are there on Saturday night. So with the scout hat on, I'll be watching that game, but I will be there to promote our baseball auctions. And we're going to have a Q&A on an Innovation Island tomorrow, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. But you're also going to be on there a little bit later talking about Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. And I think we absolutely just have to use this metaverse so much more. We can do so many cool things on Innovation Island. So I guess just give everybody a little bit of rundown of what's happening tomorrow with you guys.
Yeah, Dean, now that November's upon us on Monday, it's time to start ramping up for the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors as well. And we're just going to host an information session, essentially another Q&A from 6 to 8 p.m. on Innovation Island. We're going to meet in the UFHL boardroom so you go to UFF Sports and then to the UFHL boardroom. It'll be open to anyone with interest in the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors ahead of that franchise auction, Dean, on November 20th and 21st. It's just fun to start talking World Juniors, right? The schedule is going to come out soon for the World Juniors. We're already seeing there's the U24 Nations tournament taking place in Europe. We've seen those rosters. We kind of know what Finland, Sweden, Czech Republic, Russia are looking to do with their World Junior team. Really just start talking World Juniors, get some hockey chat going, as well as obviously focusing on the UFWJ as far as the gameplay plans for this revolutionary league. And it is a dynasty league, Dean. It's not just a one-year league. This is a dynasty league like all leagues on the UFFS platform. So you're going to have returning players from year to year in the World Juniors. Some will age out and not be back, but kind of the gameplay plans. And then certainly the benefits for scouts, because this is going to be a revenue generator for scouts that already have registered a lot of these World Junior players. They're going to be leased to these UFWJ franchises, and depending how your prospect performs in the World Juniors, you'll get a little kickback there in score coins. So as well, Dean, again, talking about 2022 NHL draft rankings, any prospect junkies that want to jump on and just discuss prospects, because several of those top prospects, Dean, are going to be on display at the World Junior Championship. So a good crossover between finishing off the preliminary draft rankings for UFFS, as well as pumping up the UFWJ Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors Dynasty League and the franchise auction on November 20th and 21st.
So there's where you're going to go. You're going to go to the UFHL boardroom, I believe you said. But yeah, people can check out all the different team offices and see what it would be like joining up with UFF Sports if they're not already. And, you know, all of our leagues, our baseball will have a setup here, basketball, football, hockey. You have your own little space and a lot of really cool things. There, you even have your own office, Larry. So it's pretty cool. People can come. I've heard you have the best candy in your office as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to joining that discussion tomorrow, learning more about it, and just talking hockey on a Saturday night. I will be watching some baseball as well while we do that. But certainly looking forward to having a baseball chat and a hockey chat on Innovation Island tomorrow.
Yeah, Dean, come one, come all. Trick-or-treaters, you're more than welcome. I don't know how to get the candy out of the screens in the office yet, but we'll do our best to entertain and to inform both with UFLB and the baseball league that's upon us next week, as well as the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors that'll be right around the corner once the calendar turns to November.
Great stuff, Larry. As usual, I think I hear another trade almost happening, so I know you have to go and get the details on that, because you're going to have a lot when we come back. We won't have a show next week. I'm going to be en route to Regina traveling, so hopefully this tides everybody over. And I can't imagine. We took 1 week off before, and the mailbag exploded from 2 weeks, so I can't imagine what's going to be like when we get back on the air. But enjoy this weekend, and we'll see you on Innovation Island.
Sounds good, Dean. Have a good weekend.
This is UFHL Now with Dean Millard. Get in the game, where you own the game.
All right, another really informative. How about that trade? Just mega blockbusters happening left, right, and center in the UFHL, and I absolutely just love it. I love so much about this league, the people in it, and everything. It is an absolute blast and a pleasure to be involved. But I have to get to the duck call now. And so this week, that's a little bit too much of a zoom, eh? Let's get that zoomed out a little bit. This week on the duck call, what I'm going with is asking people to not be offended when they ask you what you want for a player. So if you have somebody you want and you ask another team and they don't want to trade that player, they're going to come back with something really high. If you get offended by that, that's on you. Now, I have encountered this very little. And the other day, George Batchel and I were talking about a trade. He asked me what I would want. I told him because I wasn't prepared, didn't want to trade that player. He said, it's too much, thanks. And he didn't stomp his feet like a kid. You know, we can be adults. If I want a player and you don't want to trade him, you should be asking a high price. So, thankfully, that hasn't happened that much. It's happened a few times where people seem to get offended. But again, remember, if you don't want to trade that player, why wouldn't you ask for the moon? You know, if I don't want to trade Colton Parayko, I'm going to ask for everything and make it so hard to say no to that trade because I want to build around that player. So just food for thought when we're talking with each other about trade negotiations or different things, you know, and I think, some people have it great. When somebody says, when I ask for a player and they say, this is what I'm wanting, then you go get it. I'm not prepared to pay that, and that's fine, but that's your prerogative. So we can all be cordial, fun. You can say, well, I think that's really high and I don't want to pay it, but you don't have to be rude about it. And you can just, thanks, but no thanks. If you don't want to, and if you don't want to trade a guy, you just simply say no, and then they move on to the next one. But I just wanted to throw that out there because I have had some people ask me about players I don't want to trade. And so if you get a really high ask, if you ask me for that player, that's why. Because I don't want to trade that player, and I want to make sure if I, for whatever reason, did, I would be getting full value for that player. All right, that's going to wrap things up. Want to remind you, though, tomorrow on Innovation Island, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Larry's going to be there. I'm going to drop on and chat hockey as well. Come and check out the UFHL boardroom on Innovation Island. That's what it looks like. Download your avatar. It's really, really, really cool. And earlier in the day, I'm going to be on Innovation Island in the auditorium where you can win autographed baseballs from James Paxton, autographed baseball from Doc Gooden, some Topps baseball cards, and some UFLB merchandise. So download your avatar. If you don't know how to do that, send an email, info@UFFsports.com, and I'll give you the instructions on how you can download, create your avatar, and join me from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time in the auditorium on Innovation Island. Okay, that is going to wrap things up for us on the program today. I'd like to thank Larry Fisher, as usual, for joining me on the show. No show next week, as I'll be in Regina getting ready for UFLB baseball auctions. Info UFF Sports, or info UFLB at UFFsports.com if you would like more information on how you can get in the game, where you own the game with the greatest fantasy baseball league ever. Again, thanks to Larry Fisher for joining me as UFHL Insider. Thanks to you, the listeners, the watchers, those in our league that get excited for this show. We do this for you, and we cover this league because it deserves to be covered like the best league in the world. Have a great weekend. We'll see you tomorrow on Innovation Island. Come check us out. Learn what you can about Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. For UFHL Now, I'm Dean Millard.
UFHL Now is produced by DM Productions. To get in touch, head to www.podcastalley.ca.